Hello, this is Jack Downs with a little video demo of the transitions exercise. I'm going to do bits of this and then let you fill in the rest of it. The goal of this exercise is to get you to practice with some different transitions and see and notice that there are such things as transitions and decisions to be made with them in your editing. So I have, as I suggested in the exercise, and you should have the assignment sheet, I have thrown here in my media bin, media browser, my 5 transitions files. So they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, and that's the order in which you take them out and drop them on the timeline. I'm going to go to editing. Yeah, that makes more sense. And I'm going to do 1 and 2. I noticed that I'm really zoomed out for some reason. There. Remember, you can change the size of this scroll bar with these handles at the end to zoom in time. And I'll just do 1, 2, 3. You're going to do 4 and 5 also. Unlike the instructions, I am not going to do the title slide. You should know how to do that now. We use the same system that we did in your earlier exercises. So refer to those if you have any questions or you want more instructions. Do notice that I suggest you make you call it, you give it a two-line name. Like this first one we call it straight cuts, and then you put by your name. And then, but remember, there's like 3 or 4, if you have extra credit, 4 versions of this file you're making, and you need to change this text on this intro slide, the text on that every time. Okay, good. But so I'm going to let you handle that. Good. So the first one is very simple. You simply bring in all 5, and we do what are called straight cuts, which is just, there's no cut necessary. It just means we just go from one to the next to the next. The transition, the straight cut transition or a straight transition is just, it's just one clip butts up against the next one. That's all there is to it. And then you export it, and you make sure you got what you wanted. Make sure you use the correct name. So that'd be as the instructions say, and that one is done. So that was easy, right? Hey, it was already done it. I, by the way, am also not saving my project, nor am I doing the exports for you. So this is normal settings and so on. So I'm moving on to part 2 now. So that was quick. Part 2. Part 2 is something probably not a surprise either. We're going to use what we call I call crossfades. In Premiere, it's called cross dissolve, right? So this is a transition between the 2 pieces. If we look at where we are now, if I play between the 2, it just goes from one to the next, one to the next, right? Good. Of course, you can listen and watch these things too. So if I want to do this transition as it explains here, we're going to go to Effects, and we're going to go to Video Effects. Sorry, not Video Effects. Video Transitions. And then in the dissolve area, we want cross dissolve. And I'm going to drag and drop it on the joint between those 2. Okay. You will see this note here, insufficient media. This transition will contain repeated frames. What that means is the 2 files you have there are complete. There isn't any more video available to create the transition with. So it's essentially saying it's just going to repeat some frames to do it, which is okay. You wouldn't get that message if you had done some cutting, changing the length of the video. It would then have some material to work with. But this is not an error, it's just informational. Likewise, I could do a right-click, apply default transition. Same thing. That's the default transition is that cross fade. I'm noticing I'm getting because I hadn't selected the video only, I'm getting a problem there, huh? It's applying that transition, it's applying the default audio transition also. So I guess in this case, because we see the red is in both top and bottom, we don't want to do that, probably the apply default transition. So instead, we would again go to the cross dissolve and grab the cross dissolve and drag and drop it there and say okay there too, and continue along. And then what does this look like? I'll just play through this one. There's Jess, and there's our next person in line there. Good. So it sort of makes a visual movement from one to the next. Okay, it just makes it seem like one is dissolving into the next, like that, right? But it's very brief, but it does change the feel of the video. I don't think there's anything wrong with straight cuts, transitions in your work. There's nothing wrong with cross dissolves. They are perhaps a little bit gimmicky. They actually can give you a feeling that the video is taking longer, although the video may be the same length. I've noticed that. But if you're going to do one or the other, you would probably do one or the other throughout your production. Okay, so you're going to do all of them that way. Just that's a default 1 second cross dissolve video transition on all the joints between those things, and you're going to save your project as you go. Again, now you're going to export with a different name now, and you're going to first make sure you change that intro slide also. That was part 2. Let's go on to part 3. It gets a little more interesting. Part 3. Part 3, what I ask you to do is to make all those cross dissolves 2 second dissolves, right? How do you do that? You double click on it, you can change it to 2 from the default 1 to 2. I'll change that one. I'm going to change this one. I'm only doing these. You're going to do all of them, right? To 2 second dissolve. That means that the dissolve between them is much longer. Well, it's twice the length. It's still only 2 seconds. It's not that long. But now I want you to apply some special transition to those. So what do I mean? Well, if we go to, for instance, let's go to 3D motion, cube spin. If I drag and drop that on that, now I have a 2 second cube spin. What is that? Well, let's look. It's a weird transition. And by the way, I could have just removed the cross dissolves and applied, but it'll just go over it in the same length of time. How about a dip to white? Dip to white is, as you would think, goes to white. Dip to white, dip to black is actually a shortcut to something we're going to be doing later in a more manual way. How about a morph cut? What's that one? Let's take a look. So it wasn't able to do the morph cut. At least it wasn't able to show us in the preview. Remember, everything we see in this window here is a preview and isn't what would be in the final video. Barn doors is always a good one, and that will show us. That'll work. Yeah. So let's try that one.
Check out.
Barn doors.
If you didn't have any...
Here's the point. You can play with these transitions, find different ones that you like, but realize that these are very gimmicky, and you probably would only use these in something you wanted to look gimmicky in. I guess another vocabulary word we could use for it is sophomoric, which is a bit of a slight on sophomores, but in other words, kind of immature, right? So I'm going to suggest you don't use these later on. So let's not use these. However, we will show you a way to use a slide that maybe might make sense. So you're going to do all these. You're going to save your project. You're going to export another media again. This time you're going to change the name. You will change the title slide also, as described in the instructions. And that could be the end of the exercise right there. You got 3 MP4s that you stuck up on Brightspace, and that would complete it. But what if you want to do the extra credit? Well, I'll come back to that in just a minute. Okay, now let's continue. And I'm asking you to do some other kinds of fades. Go back to editing for a minute. Transition, two different kinds of transitions. This is for the extra credit portion. And also, as part of this, we're going to be doing a slide on the movement on the title slide. So I've not done a title slide yet, but I'll have to add that. Okay, so you already have all these in here, and you have transitions on them. How are you going to proceed? Well, you could just delete them all off the timeline and throw them on again. And therefore, they wouldn't have the transitions on them. Or you could go to the transitions that you have and do a right click and say clear, and it removes them. You can remove transitions like that. Okay, so I have no transition there now. It just goes from one to the other. It's a straight cut. So I want to make a fade to black, or a transition through black, or some people call it a dip into black or a dip into white. So it's as if one ends and the other one begins, but there's white or black underneath it. So there is a transition effect you could do for this, but I want to show you kind of manually how to do it. And it'll introduce something else too, another concept. How do I get in there to do this? Well, if I select one end, the left side, or if I want to be even sure, I could just grab a clip and I could move it a little bit, like move this clip away so there's a gap there. I'm sure I'm just selecting one end. Okay, I can apply my cross dissolve just to that end. So again, I can go to my effects and go to my dissolves and do a cross dissolve just to this end. Right, good. And then I could do the same thing to the other end. So I have two different cross dissolves now. That's different than putting one that joins them together. And now if I put them together, what happens? Well, let's play it through and watch.
If I could.
What it does is it dissolves out, and then the next side forms through a dissolve. Why is it black in between? It's because there's nothing underneath it. In video, remember, unlike audio, in video, the thing on top wins. And when there's nothing below something, it's just black. Okay, good. So that does you can call it a dip into black or a fade to black. So when would we do that transition? Probably, this is a very heavy transition. And I don't think you do it in a normal production, but imagine that you kind of have things broken up into chapters or something. But yet you didn't want a different title to go on. So it's like sections more, a heavier transition. But what if you don't like the fade to black? What if you want to fade to white there instead? Yes, there is a place you can find that in your effects over here, but instead I'd like you to do it manually. So we need to put some white underneath there. Where do we get white? How do we put anything underneath there? There's no space underneath there, right? Well, do notice that we can just take these guys and we can move them up into various other tracks. I could keep on moving. Do I need another track? Ever need another track? Just click up here, do a right click, add tracks, just add one track and just say okay. Adds more video and audio tracks at the same time. It doesn't matter where this track is in this list. You actually can name these tracks different things, give them names. If you were like doing a big production, you want to make sure you had all of a certain type of file on a certain track, you could do that, but they're still all video tracks. These are still all audio tracks. Okay, so I've made a gap here, right? In fact, I'm going to move that up even more. Reach those two, and actually I'd have to do this with all the rest of them too. Good. And they're just touching like that. And then I have to do the next one too. So right now, we'll say I'm just doing this like that, and I've got my, and I told you in the instructions I want you to do, so the first three, do it just like this. So it fades to black in between, right? And if I made that fade longer, that black would be longer also, right? Now I'm going to imagine you come to the last, let's see, hold on, let's, actually in the instructions, I have to change the instructions. It may have to be the first two one way and then the second two the other, because you only have 4 transitions total. Yeah, this time you don't have 6 files, you have 5 files. You have 4 transitions total. I'll change the instructions so it'll be the first 2 fades will be fade to and from black. And then the last 2 fades, how are you going to do those? Well, I'm going to use the same one again. How do I put some white in it below here? Notice, if I go back to editing, you can get this more easily. There is a little new item tool down here in this media bin project area, right? I click on there. Actually, I have a lot of things I could do here. I could do black video if I wanted to add just some black for some reason. I could do a color matte. Okay, I could do transparent video there too. Color matte, and it's going to automatically choose the same size. That's our HD size as the video is. That's okay. So in general, I can just say okay to this. But for the color matte, it's going to let me choose a color, and I can edit this later if I wished. And of course, I'm going to click down here and essentially make it white, or close enough. And I'm going to say okay, and it's going to say, well, you want to name it? I'm going to name it white. You don't have to name it. Say okay. Where did it appear? It appeared down here in my media bin, and now I just drag it like any other piece of video and I throw it on here. Where do I put it? Do I put it up here? No, because why? It would just be plain white for as long as that thing is. I want it below, because the thing on top wins, but when there's nothing on top, like in the middle of that fade, it will, see, I don't see any white there yet, but as soon as we hit the fade, Goes to white and then back out again. So that idea of layering things is an important one. It doesn't matter that this thing is whatever, 5 seconds long or something. No, it doesn't matter because most of it's hidden. Okay, so you can do 2 of those and 2 of the other kind. All right, finally, the last thing for extra credit is to add a slide. So let's go back to captions and graphics and know that normally we would say we're going to use a, we would browse, and we've been going to titles or title and browsing those, good. And we've been going down to find the basic title with a background, basic title and background, good, yes. And we've been sticking that on here like that, right? Okay. And I want some more, I may need some more tracks actually, but I'll have to get a gap one there, but it's fine. Right now that looks like this. Okay, good. But I want to add a transition that makes the title move. But unfortunately, because this title comes with a background, that means the background moves also. I don't want that to happen. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to go to my effects, and I'm going to go to a slide. I'm going to do a slide. I'm going to add it to the beginning, right? What does that do? Let's watch and see what happens. Play it, and the whole thing slides on. But I want the kind of screen, the gray area to just be there. I want the text to slide. Well, how can I do that? Here's how I could do it. There's one way. There's lots of them actually. I'm going to add more tracks, by the way, and say okay. Good. I could take this title and I could delete the title from it. Delete the words from it, right? And I could remove the slide. Clear that. So right now all I have is gray there. And instead I could go get what? How about I go get a title that doesn't have a background? Because I'm just using this background underneath there. I'm going to browse, and it's going to be title again. And I'm going to take a basic to, oh, that's not right. I didn't do my search yet. Search for titles, okay. I'm going to do a basic title, not a lower third. Oops, come on, slide down there. Okay, a basic title 2-line, and throw it on top here. Okay, so now it's there, and we still have the background, but I might want to make that slide. So I'm going to go to my effects, and I'm going to go to slide. I'm going to tell it to slide in from the left, and then I'm going to tell it to slide out to the right. But that's not a slide, that's a push on the right side. You can experiment with these and find out what I mean when I say the slide is not going to work on the right side. It's a push on the right. We slide things in, we push them out. Those are the 2 terms we use, at least in Premiere. So the slide goes like this, the text slides in, and then the text is going to slide out. Now, I did notice that this kind of was a big hit with the dropping off of the gray. I would definitely want that to have a transition there to fade that. So now it looks like this. It's complete. I think, of course, you have to put the text in there.
If I could only eat 1 food for a week, it would probably be tacos.
Slides and it fades at the same time. So there you go. If it bothered you, you can actually extend that a little bit further too. So the thing was still there. You can work on it more if you wish. But that finishes the extra credit. So I hope that all works for you and you're getting more used to Premiere.